All right guys, welcome back to the channel. So today's video is gonna be on, I don't know yet. I know it's gonna involve this 2017 GMC Denali. It's got a Whipple on it, no cam or anything. Don't know what today's lesson is gonna be on because frankly, I've tuned this truck 2 years ago. He's changed to a Weapon X 5-inch cold air intake, Nick Williams 103 throttle body. So maybe there'll be some drama, maybe they won't. Either way, let's dive in and I'll show you what all's done to this truck. So hopefully y'all realize by now that my videos aren't scripted. I have no idea. I just try to show you guys what real life is like for me. But the truck's pretty clean. I like all the paint match stuff. Looks pretty good. But this is the old school 2.9 Whipple. It's got a 4.125 pulley on it. This is just a stock bottom end 6.2. It's got some headers, Mighty Mouse catch can. Again, Nick Williams 103 and the new 5-inch Weapon X intake. Otherwise, this truck is stock. I think it's stock in-tank fuel pump, stock high-pressure fuel pump, stock injectors, things like that. So we're just gonna basically dial this thing in. I had to load in one of my 5-inch files to get the truck to actually back up on the dyno, but we'll pull up the file and we'll go over what all's done to this thing. This is an 8-speed truck, so it's T87A. So this one, I can't remember if this one's got an unlocked TCM or not. We'll figure that out when we pull up the tune, but let's get to work. All right, so I'm in the truck now. Just look through, we don't have a TCM unlock. So just so you guys are aware, just because the TCM is locked, we can still alter shift points and we can delay them out a little bit further and help just the truck's overall feel by working on driver demand tables. So we may do a little bit of that. Going through, just kind of verified what all this truck has done to it. You guys can see that we have the LT4 map sensor in here. So just trying to get it, basically catch a reminder as to what all's done to this truck. Cause like I said, it's been 2 years or so since I've been in this thing. So everything else looks clean. Truck's already running okay, but we can discuss about what changes I had to make to the MAF for the 5-inch intake. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and get the truck up in the air, get the wideband in, and then we'll get it back on the rollers and then we'll get to work. All right guys, so I've got the truck strapped down on the dyno, fans are going, everything's good, wideband's plugged in. So I'm gonna go ahead on and we're gonna log into this truck on the scanner. And I wanna get an idea as to where we're at on short-term fuel trims, where we're at on idle timing, because again, the customer installed a Nick Williams 103 throttle body. He also installed the Weapon X 5-inch cold air, and he installed a flex fuel sensor, even though we're not gonna be running flex. So, all right, so as you guys can see, we're a little bit negative on fuel trims right now. Injector pulse width looks okay. We're a little bit negative on timing right now as well. So this truck being a stock camshaft, I usually just run these right around between 0 and 5 degrees of idle advance. That's just what I prefer. So 0 pedal torque is actually up some. So what we're gonna do is the first, like I haven't touched anything other than put the 5-inch MAF diameter in it. So I haven't made the adjustment for the throttle body yet. So let's go ahead on and make the adjustment for just the throttle body alone. We're gonna change the throttle area and let's see. So right now, if you notice, we're right around 41 or so foot-pounds at 0 pedal torque, and we're negative timing right now. So it's actually dropped just a little bit. Yeah. So anyways, so you guys see where we're at right now. Let's make a change and then we'll try it again. So all I'm gonna do is we're gonna go over to airflow, electronic throttle. And right now it was set up for the L86 throttle body. That's the 4118. For the Nick Williams 103, sometimes I don't even make an adjustment on Gen 5. Gen 4 I definitely do, but Gen 5, sometimes they actually like to be factory, sometimes they don't. But from what I figured up, which very well could be wrong, I was just trying to base it off of factory diameter versus the number here, and then I'll go up to the 103 and versus the number here. I come up with 6243. So I'm not gonna change anything else. We're just gonna load this in. And you guys will be able to see what it does for 0 pedal torque, what it does for idle ignition advance, and then we'll make an adjustment from there. So realistically, the process that needs to be done is you need to go through, make sure the MAF curve is correct. VE table should be almost spot on for this truck since I tuned it before. Now obviously, supercharger inlet pressure, like this truck doesn't have a sensor that measures that, but that inlet pressure is gonna be lower, so it is gonna make the blower a little bit more efficient, so it could alter VE slightly. But the intake runner length, all that stuff is all still the same. So VE shouldn't change that much at all. But anyway, so the goal is gonna be to get the MAF dialed in to where the fuel trims are happy, the wideband's happy, all that stuff is happy first before we make any torque model adjustments if necessary or anything else. So just keep in mind that your torque model is directly dictated off of MAF curve and VE. So we have to have those things correct before we can make any type of accurate adjustment on torque. Now, sometimes you'll have to make an adjustment on torque just to get the vehicle to where it'll actually idle, but you're still gonna keep massaging it until you work all these numbers together. All right, tuner's loaded in. Let's go ahead and start it. Startup felt no different. And we are gonna let the truck settle in to idle for a second before we judge it at all. So you'll notice that 0 pedal torque hasn't changed. Timing advance has. So I can watch it, we'll watch it for maybe another 30 seconds or so, but you guys will see the impact that increasing the throttle area actually had on this truck. And it actually put us in a worse predicament. That's one of the reasons why a lot of guys, including myself, sometimes will leave the throttle area scaler alone, because it directly correlates to the ignition advance due to air mass. So can I massage this in the torque table? I absolutely can, but sometimes that's just an added step. So anyways, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead on and we're just gonna drive this for a second. You guys will see I'm fairly close on short-term fuel trims, honestly. Like if we go ahead on and pull up, I mean, I'm not terrible. 4 or 5% off, 3% off. I mean, this is literally just a 5-inch MAF curve that I have. It was actually from a cammed, I don't even remember, it was a cammed Whipple truck for sure, but so the data's already pretty close as it is. All right, so we're looking pretty clean down low for sure. Okay, so I need to make an adjustment here. You guys see where the positive short-term fuel trims are like this? We can make that adjustment in that right there and get rid of that. So I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, so now that the truck's ran a little bit, you guys will see that short-term fuel trims have gone a lot more negative, and the ignition advance has settled back in. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to tell you, like, let's let it settle in and even run it sometimes, is to try to get all this stuff dialed in. So first thing we're gonna do, just letting short-term fuel trims populate this stuff. You kind of see how drastic of a difference it is versus in gear and then in park. All right, we can make that work. I'm actually just gonna subtract 14% all the way down. Now I do need to go ahead and make an adjustment on the axis. And you can change this stuff after. You don't have to have the axis set up before you take the data log. As long as the channels have data logged it, you can make all the changes that you want. So you'll notice how the data went away, but all we've got to do is just, we can move this around or do whatever we need to do, and it'll sort through. It'll sort itself out. All right, so 2100 and below. Let's take out 14%-ish. And interpolate over like 3,000 or so. Now again, this is just a guess. Just show, we're just doing this on camera. Like this is just, I'm trying to show you guys how to do this. They'll still want to change. All right, I'm just gonna leave that just like that. So we're just gonna stick with that one change, and I'm gonna load this in. All right, so that tune file's been loaded in. I also went ahead and just turned on the flex fuel sensor. You guys have seen me do that on almost every video. So that's no change. Again, the truck's on just regular pump gas. You guys can see the ethanol content's 10.2%. I'd already had stoic factored in at 14.08, so none of that's gonna have changed. But 0 pedal torque right now is 24 foot-pounds. Still pulling a little bit of timing. Yeah, air fuel ratio commanded is currently 14.1, so we're pretty much on the money as far as what that goes. All right, I'm gonna go on and drive it again. if y'all are watching, you can see where the V table, Dyno, all that stuff is all still lining up. That's because with the changes that were made, it really doesn't affect that stuff too much. So really, like if you're tuning professionally on something like this, you really only have to make the change to the mass, like the mass airflow sensor calibration, and that's really going to be about it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead on, and fuel trims look good, VE table looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead on and I'm going to make an adjustment to the torque model to actually get the truck to go a little bit less on negative timing. So the torque model stuff, you guys have been asking about some of that, and that stuff is it can be tricky. Now, so keep in mind, this truck had already been tuned for the torque model to where it was idling between 0 and 5 degrees, which is where I want it. Some guys may want 10, some guys may want 15. Every application is different. Unless you have a 5-gas analyzer and you are trying to do everything just as perfect can get, it's just basically all you want is you want to make sure the timing is in a good spot for idle torque reserve. That way when your AC compressor kicks on or you're coasting back down to idle, that you have enough idle torque reserve to where the truck doesn't stall, if that makes sense. So I'm going to target between 5, we'll just say let's just target 5 degrees of ignition timing is what we're going to want to get with this truck. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into virtual torque, and we're going to go under air mass, and I am going to, we're going to look at where we're idling at. So we're idling at approximately 650 RPM. So we're going to be subtracting some torque from these areas, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck link selections. So most of the time when you're making torque model adjustments, you want this link selections button to be checked. That way, as you're making adjustments, it makes the adjustments all the way around, because usually the factory does pretty well at, if you dial in the torque model at say 20 degrees, that it does calculate correctly all the way to negative 10. In the instance of these big throttle bodies, you have so much airflow that a lot of the times the trucks they kind of struggle to actually get the idle torque down to where they're happy. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to have the truck put some timing back in there. That way it actually closes the blade angle up even more. So what I'm going to do is, so 500 to 700, we're just going to make a really quick adjustment on this. So I'm going to subtract on this 0 table, I'm going to subtract 30. On this negative 10 table, I'm going to subtract 50, okay? We're going to leave it just like this. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to interpolate between horizontal bounce. Make sure it went all the way down on that one. It did. All right. So all we did was we made a change on just these. We're going to leave this 10 alone, because so this, I've heard some conflicting information. Some people say that this is actually a timing delta. Some people say this is actual commanded timing. I'm going to treat it as if it's commanded timing. So we're going to extrapolate coefficients, and it's going to make an adjustment all the way across. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to map, and we're going to do the same thing in the same tables. So we're link selections is still unchecked. We're going to go 500 to 700. We're going to subtract 50. We're going to go 500 to 700 here. We're going to subtract 30. I am going to interpolate horizontally, and then I'm going to hit extrapolate coefficients, and it's going to go ahead on and make the changes to all the other tables. We're going to take this and we're going to load this in. Now, no other changes are going to be made. So we're going to see what it does to our idle ignition advance with just making those changes alone. So what it should do, if I'm correct, which I should be, every application is different. Torque model can really piss you off, just so you're aware. Most of the guys that tune these things daily, they understand, like, you've really got to work the torque model around. But what it should do theoretically is we were at approximately 24 foot-pounds of 0 pedal torque. It should reduce that number, and it should add some ignition advance. So before we shut the truck off, we were between 3 and 3.5, well, we'll say between 3 and 4 degrees of ignition advance. And we were fluctuating between 24 and 30 foot-pounds at 0 pedal torque. So now that we've made that adjustment, once the tune file's in here, we're gonna let the idle settle in, and we'll see where we're at now. All right, tune file's loaded in. All right, so you'll see that now we're actually at a positive advance. Let's look at 0 pedal torque. 0 pedal torque is 6. So just doing that has already got the truck back in its happy spot where I told you I was going to try to shoot for like 5-ish or so. Notice where we're at. That's how it works. So you may have to get super aggressive on this. Like if you've got a big cubic inch, big blower, you know, massive camshaft that has very little idle torque, you may have to subtract a bunch of torque off the torque model to actually get it to idle where it wants to be. But so let's talk about what it actually did. So it actually closed the throttle percentage up some. It increased ignition spark advance, and we reduced zero pedal torque to where now we're pretty much just chilling right on the money. So just those quick changes automatically gave me what I wanted. We don't have to change anything else. So now let's go ahead on, and I guess it's just going to dig into a little bit of a partial pull at wide open throttle and get an idea of where the wideband is, get an idea of where we're at on timing, where we're at on boost. This intake and this throttle body should have picked up some boost. So that's why I'm going to anticipate we're probably going to have to add some rail pressure to get the, injector pulse width back happy. So I'm going to lock this thing into third. We're just going to run third gear on this one right now. This is a 8-speed trans. So I don't know if I'm going to dyno it, like actually do power pulls in third or fourth. I haven't decided yet. But anyways, let's do a little partial rip. All right, so that was a good enough little partial rip. All right, I'm gonna get this thing shut off because I am in a shop with somebody else and we don't have our wall separating us right now. Wall's gonna be built next Tuesday. So we've got to get some sound deadener in this place. That way I'm not just pissing everybody off. All right, so you guys can see I haven't touched anything. This is just my normal 5-inch MAF data. And you can see actual versus commanded. We're pretty damn close. Let's go to EQ area versus MAF. And I mean, yeah, you guys can see how close we are. But take note, look at injector pulse width. So we're starting to get to the point where we're basically out of injector. Remember, 6 milliseconds is kind of like the limit on these. So what I'm going to do is, like you see where rail pressure is at 14.27 megapascal. And also keep in mind this is a factory L86 truck, so we've got factory L86 injectors. So I'm going to increase rail pressure to reduce injector pulse width right here. So I'm going to go ahead on and go up to basically 20 megapascal, because by adding 25% here, theoretically we should drop this down, 20 to 25%. So that's what we're going to want. We want to keep injector pulse width as close to factory as possible to make our SOI tables still accurate. Even with the blower, the SOI tables can still be accurate. The factory tables can, as long as you're maintaining injector pulse to be close to where the factory was at wide open throttle. So let's go ahead on and make an adjustment to our rail pressure. All right, so what we're gonna do is let's go from, let's see where we were at. Pretty much right away. Yeah, pretty much right away. All right, so I'm just gonna add 5. So where were we at still area wise? 128. All right, so I'm gonna change this and I'm gonna make this 128 at the end. Now this actually is gonna look kind of funny, but you're about to see why. Let me pull up the graph and you'll see where the ECU is gonna interpolate between these two numbers, and it's gonna keep us happy. So I can actually leave the majority of this table factory. I can make that 128. I can add my megapascal there. I can smooth it out and keep the table happy without changing any of the lower numbers. So the ECU, just remember, your ECU is always going to interpolate between two values like that. So it just makes it easier. I know the axis looks kind of funny, but just trust me, it makes it easier. So we're going to add 5 megapascal right here. This pump is completely safe up to like 21.5 megapascal or so. All right, so you see where we've got here. So now I'm just going to start to do the smoothing. So we'll go from here-ish, go down. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna look at the first number, that's 15. Go down from there. Actually, let's just do it this way. Let's just go from like, yeah, let's just go like 50. Just do it like this and see how this looks. That look okay? Yeah, that looks fine. Keep in mind, rail pressure directly correlates to injection timing. So just remember that. I just straight up messed that up. All right, let's just do like this. All right, that looks good. We'll leave it like that. All right, so we're gonna load this in, and then I'm also gonna make that little bit of a change. First off, I need to copy over the axis for my MAF, shift over to EQ Air. I have one of these layouts already set up, but I just grabbed just my first 5th gen one, or Gen 5 one, which is actually my 6th gen ZL1 table, because I was just tuning on the 6th gen ZL1. Alright, so we're gonna do it like that. Okay, better yet, I'm missing too much shit out of here. Let's just go to my layout I want. Let's go to Gen 5 force induction. That should have us clean on everything. Well, almost. Start from like here-ish. $7,500. All right, so we're just making some small changes, and of course up here it said it was off by just a little under 1%. So I'm gonna multiply it by the same, and then kind of smooth this out down here. And all right, we're gonna send it with this and see how it does. Otherwise, timing looked pretty good. So we're making like right around 7.5 pounds or so. 7.39 pounds. So that's not bad at all. Find out how much power this thing makes. It's probably making some pretty decent power. You'll see VE table is pretty close. See how close all this stuff is? It's because I had her dialed 2 years ago. All right, let's send this in. What I'm gonna do is let's go on and do a power pull. I'm gonna load this in and we'll do a power pull. All right, so we're gonna go ahead on and do a power pull, and we're gonna run 3,000 to 6,000, and I'm gonna do 4th gear. So this truck has a 1.69 to 1 4th gear. It is a 323 gear truck, so we're gonna run it right up to about the limit where I normally, my happy spot, but should be all right. I'll lift if I feel anything funny. All right, manifold air temp looks good. Engine coolant temp looks good. Let's do a pull. All right, so far data looks pretty clean. All right, let's get out and see what kind of power it made. So that 4th gear pull made 493 horsepower, 470 foot-pounds of torque. This is what it's going to show at the flywheel, 670 horsepower, 649 foot-pounds of torque. So we're right around the factory power level of like an LT4. So that works out pretty good. So I'm definitely happy. It looks like it actually made peak power right as soon as the dyno was shutting off, so we may not have found the power peak just yet. So let's just adjust this graph real quick. So we'll just make it 6,100. And yeah, so we really hadn't found the power peak just yet. This factory camshaft's actually doing okay up there, which is good. I mean, I kind of figured that, when you have a little bit shorter runner of an intake below that Whipple, it actually will shift that power curve over to where it likes a little bit more RPM. So I'll actually increase the dyno up a little bit more. The only thing is I'm not sure, the truck where the TCM's not unlocked, it may want to go ahead on and shift. So we'll get in there and look at the dyno, or look at the data on HPtuners, and if it shifted before 6,100, then we may just have to leave it at 6,000. So let's jump back in the truck and look at the data. All right, so let's see where we're at. come in, looks like power enrichment's just a little bit lazy. So we can make an adjustment there. It also may just be a little bit of a transient delay with this wideband. Yeah, so we'll make that adjustment, but looks like from about 7350 up, showing we're just a little bit lean. So not a big deal at all. So let's go 70. Let's see, where are we going to start at? Let's go 7650. Let's do it just like this. So 7650 up. Gonna add more to the math. All right, we're gonna add some more up here. Just watching the trend line, it says it's a little bit less than 1%, so I'm adding that as well. Looks like the VE is being a little bit lazy. If you'll notice right here, we're just a little bit off compared to Dyno. But it comes in and starts to match. That's good. Okay. Only thing I'm seeing, I mean, yeah, low side pressure kind of acting a little bit funny. Let's check peak torque. Okay, peak torque, we need to make an adjustment. Now, this is one I've showed you guys before. So this is, we're looking at peak torque versus actual torque. And so I like to hold about 30 foot-pounds of torque between peak torque and actual torque. So this is telling us that we're getting a little bit too close. So what I can do is from this 3,500 to 6,200, I can take and I can copy this. So we can go over here and we're gonna subtract this number. So from 3,500, all right, so 3,500, we're just gonna subtract. We're gonna subtract right here. And what this is gonna do is basically this is telling us that this table is now just like, here, we can actually copy this one down too. All right, so what we're gonna do is this tells us exactly, this right here is basically, if we did a pull right now, our peak torque table is gonna basically overlay actual torque. So we wanna give it about a 30-degree spread. So where we just added, let's go ahead on and put another 30 foot-pounds above that, because again, we want peak torque to be just barely above actual, but still giving it accurate data. So you'll see some guys that'll throw this peak torque way off in the left field. That's gonna mess with power enrichment. It's gonna do a bunch of weird stuff. Now, can you tune around that? Yes, you can, but if you just follow the torque model and do what you're supposed to do, everything will work out just fine. All right, so anyway, since we just added that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add it to these other tables as well. Wait, what did it just do? Here, let me copy this again. Or we're gonna subtract this, subtract, and then we're gonna add 30. All right, so now this peak torque table should accurately reflect what the truck is actually doing. So we've got that squared away, so that should be good. Let's look at split. All right, yeah, we're good. We're good on split too. All right, so we're gonna double check fuel pressure, make sure low side can keep up. So we're gonna go to fuel system, fuel pump, commanding 560. This pump ought to do that. Yeah. Let's make sure we have plenty here. Yeah. Yeah, so we've got this pump to where the low side pump is doing all she's got. All right, and yeah, we'll leave it there. So we're gonna load it in. Timing wise, honestly, this truck's probably not gonna want much more than this. right, but yeah, timing wise, this truck's probably not gonna want much more than this because it is a heavy truck and it is on pump gas. So we may try 1 degree or so, but realistically, the whole goal of today's tune is just gonna be to make sure that the truck's happy with the new upgrades. So let's load in this tune file. Also note, I was gonna try to run it up to 6100, but you'll see that the truck actually automatically shifted at like 6060, so we can't even increase the dyno RPM. So we're just, without a TCM, it is what it is. So let's load this in and we'll do another pull. Tune file is loaded in, let's do another pull. My brain's all scatterbrained when I'm working on something like this, just trying to make sure I got everything covered. So hopefully you guys understand the whole row pressure thing, making sure the MAF is dialed, working on peak torque. We added some fuel, so because we added fuel, we may have to make another peak torque adjustment, but you guys will see the changes that we made, how it's gonna dictate, or how it's gonna look on my data log. So again, we're gonna do 4th gear to 6,000. All right, let's let it rip. Had some knock on that one. Now, as y'all saw, we didn't change anything timing wise, and it may have not actually even done anything. Looks like it pulled just a little bit. It didn't pull as much as it's showing right here. So power wise, they're probably still gonna be about the same, if not even more. All right, so let's get out and see what kind of power it made. Looks like boost went up just a touch also. Also, before we shut this off, let's see. Peak torque. So we still got to massage peak torque a little bit again too, because we added fuel. Therefore, we got to just keep working on peak torque. All right, let's get out and see what kind of power it made. So it picked up a little bit. Made 500 on the dot, 476 foot-pounds of torque. So at the flywheel, that's 682, 655. And it's still showing peak power right there where we shut it off, basically. So again, the dyno would show higher if we could rev it out a little bit more. So that's probably gonna be about all this truck wants, but let's get back in. We'll make an adjustment on peak torque and check SOI, and may do one or two more pulls. All right, I'm seeing, look at this. Injector pulse width is up. We're running out of pump now. Okay. So now is when we start to try to fight with it a little bit. So this pump is not wanting to maintain row pressure anymore. So as you guys saw, we added the 5 megapascal to it. It's not getting anywhere close to that. I mean, 15-ish is about all it's doing. Okay, where we at? We at over here. Okay, so split SOI. All right, so we can back this up some. Keep in mind on this truck, I'm gonna try to target right around 180 degrees. So as rail pressure starts to tank, I mean, we can back this up a little bit more. I mean, 400 degrees or so, 400 to 405 is about all this is gonna want, like on the ECU side of things. So we're starting to run out of fuel system. So I mean, but if you think about it, we're on stock pump, stock high pressure pump, stock injectors. It's not bad. 500 wheel on here would be like 550 wheel on a Dynojet, and considering we're in 4th gear. So I'll tell you guys that in a Camaro Corvette application, on a Dynojet, I've made 640 wheel on stock LT1 stuff, but that is me stretching the absolute shit out of it. And that was also on a pro-charged car. And pro-charged cars are easier on the fuel system because the high pressure pump's driven off of the camshaft, which is RPM. You know, RPM is what gives us the fuel flow. So when we're lower on RPM, a Pro Charger is also going to be lower on boost, so we're not stressing it as much as like a Whipple truck, where a Whipple truck comes in and just you need all the fuel demand, and the RPM just isn't there. So if that makes sense. So we're just going to keep working on this, but we actually did cross over into essentially being out of fuel, and that's not good. So, all right. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's go in and work on peak torque. So we're gonna copy this from 4,000 up. Right, so we're gonna go engine, torque model, or torque management, engine, torque management, peak torque. And again, remember we're subtracting this. So we're gonna go 4,000. So we're gonna subtract, 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 and subtract. And then above 15, so we're gonna subtract 15 from here. All right, and then we are going to add the 30, try to make sure that we're 30 foot-pounds of torque ahead of it. All right, so we've got that squared away. That'll handle peak torque. All right, so the next thing we need to do, and also keep in mind, if we start to run out of pump, I can actually have the throttle blade close up some. A lot of guys don't think about this, but I could have the throttle blade close up some and reduce this boost some and keep us happy. So just keep that in mind. I don't know why more guys don't do that, but you can do that. I mean, we can essentially wastegate this supercharger by closing up the throttle some. So, all right, so I'm gonna back down rail pressure to where I had it. And that may have been what happened before, is I may have, is it this one? Yeah, I may have found this before and then put it back for that reason. So, I mean, when there's 2 years involved, I don't have notes on each vehicle. I mean, I probably should, but I don't have notes on each vehicle, so we're gonna leave it just like this. I am gonna make sure we're at least, all right, so 14, 3,200. Okay, all right, so we're gonna have tune on this some. All right, so I put that back. All right, so then let's go 3,200. We're gonna add at least 2. So let's add 2 to here. So let's put this back. We'll go 1.18. I'll just make this 1.18. Add 2. Say, we'll say 15.5 from here. I don't think we need any more than that. Yeah, we don't need any more than that. All right, so let's go here, here. So we'll start from right. We'll go right here-ish, and we'll just drop down. Sorry, and I'm probably rambling. Actually, I know I'm rambling, but this is how my brain works. When you're tuning on something, your brain's just going. So I don't know how much I'm gonna edit this out. I'm just letting the camera roll right now. Oh, Cletus is calling me.
Yo.
Hey, I hit the wrong button. What's up?
You're good. Couple questions for you on
Yes.
the red truck. We're about to go drive it.
Okay.
How do I add this AFR wideband? Or do you want any channels or anything for me to data log?
Oh yeah, I can send you some channels.
Okay. Yeah, you know that's over and I'll add it on before I go drive it.
Okay.
Alright.
You said a couple questions. Is that it?
That's actually it.
Okay. Hey, also on the trans fluid, make sure you're at least 1 quart over full.
Okay.
So I'm hoping the guys did that already, but yeah. But yeah, I'll be able to.
Overfilled a little bit?
Yeah. Usually 1 quart to 1.5 quart because the pans are so shallow on those, it'll like slosh back.
Yeah, Zach said it pours out a little bit when it's...
All right, cool. That's probably perfect then. All right, I'll send you some channels.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, see ya. Bye. All right. Anyways, I'm gonna load this in, but I also gotta send Cletus some channels for the red truck because they're gonna go data log it real quick. So I'm gonna load this in, send them some channels, and then we'll do another dyno pull. All right, so that tune file's loaded in. Having to take kind of breaks through here because Cletus is also taking the giveaway truck out for a test drive, and I think it's still dropping low side pressure. We had to temporarily put like a Bosch inline, almost like an old school 044 pump inline. It's just not enough. So he's gonna go ahead and order a better pump for the low side. Because basically, I mean, when that low side runs out, the pump and injectors can only do so much if it's not being fed the correct amount of fuel. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead on and do, this should be probably a final pull in this truck. I'm not gonna add any ignition timing because there's no sense in adding it for a video, and horsepower numbers, just turn around and take it back out for on the street. I just don't think this truck at this weight with this gearing and these wheels and tires, I don't think it's gonna want anything more than about 15 degrees or so on pump gas. That's just where I'm at. So we can turn it up later on E85 once he does the fuel system for E85. So everything else is looking clean though. And this truck is, even though the dyno doesn't reflect, the truck is making power to be starting to drop on high side pressure. It's making a little bit of power for sure. So all right, let's do this final pull and make sure it's happy, and then I'll send it home. All right, it's maintaining. Truck's gonna be fine. I'm gonna move the injection timing window just a little bit, but I just want to do that off camera. I've showed you guys that before. All I'm trying to do is I'm just gonna back it up to where, oh, I even used the wrong channels, but I'm just gonna back it up some more to where the split is approximately 180 degrees. I don't know that I'll be able to get there fully with the way the pump's dropping, but I'm not gonna be doing anything on video that's any different than what I've already shown you. So we can get out and look at horsepower, but that's just gonna be that. So, all right guys, so it looks like it picked up just a little bit more, 505 horsepower, 488 torque. But overall, just a pretty straightforward tune. So I'm gonna finish cleaning this up. I'm gonna move SOI just a little bit, just like what I always do on the DI stuff. So all I'm doing is adding numbers to the point where we can try to maintain that 180 degree split. With rail pressure dropping the way it is, it's just one of those things where I'll probably end up closing the throttle up on it just a touch up top, just to try to get it to maintain that flat 6 milliseconds. So, but I'm gonna just continue to manipulate it off camera. I need to go and get it done. So anyways, hope you guys learned something from today's video, and I will see you in the next one.